And welcome back. I just realized that I had not called up the page. But welcome back, or if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is me channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal, and we are going to continue my lamentations and love letter to John Carpenter's The Thing. I just did the prelude, the prequel, which I have called The Thing Prelude. And now we're going to do the original, where I can slobber and salivate all over it as well. I am a huge fanboy of the prelude, and I am a even huger fanboy of the original, which is sort of not mutually exclusive. You know, that's the reason why I love prelude so much, is because I love this so much, and it basically doubled the movie. So, to be honest with you, since I got the prelude, the prequel, I have not watched them separately since. I always watch prelude, and then I watch this as one long movie, and it's probably one of the most satisfying experiences that I've ever had watching a film, is to watch those two movies back to back with hardly just long enough to change the disc between them, and it is such a satisfying experience to me. So here we are. The Thing was released in 1982. It was directed by John Carpenter, written by Bill Lancaster. All of this is based on Who Goes There, which is a story. It stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, Keith David. Yeah, okay. And yeah. So now, let's give it a go, shall we? So, this movie opens. Oh, I did want to say something. There's a warning that I wanted to give you, a caution. They recently released the 4K of the original 82, John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, I started to pick that up, but as I have become accustomed to doing, I went to Blu-ray.com and read the reviews, read about it, read the specifics and everything like that. If you are tempted to buy that, feel free. However, please have a 4K player. Even though it is I started to get it just for the digital code, but even though it's a 4K Blu-ray digital code combo, unless you have a 4K player, unless you own one, or unless you're willing to pay 12 to 15 bucks, I think, for the digital code, which you could go and do that by itself, do not get it for the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is this. It is untouched. It is the exact same release as this right here. It's not been remastered. It's not been prettied up. There's been nothing to it. It's identical to this release. So don't waste your money. If you're getting it for the Blu-ray, just go get this release by itself. Because that 4K, if you don't have a 4K player, you're just, unless you don't own this and you want it, yeah, sure, go ahead and do it. But unless you want the digital code, which you could buy on its own, or unless you have a 4K player and can actually use the 4K, it's worthless to you. You can get this for $8-9, the Blu-ray. And this is the exact identical Blu-ray that's in that combo that they just released. Didn't touch it. I know a lot of people, the Scream Factory one or whatever it is, yeah, good luck with that. If you want to pay 20 bucks for it, and they ain't even got a digital code in it, you might get it for 25 bucks or something like that. I guess I could try to find it used or something to have a newer transfer than this. But I'm just warning you, that the new 4K release is the identical Blu-ray. It's identical. So there's no use for it. So maybe save you some money unless you have a 4K player. So anyway, this movie begins with the spaceship that we saw in Prelude, which they did a remarkable job making it look exactly like the ship that is approaching Earth in the original. We see a helicopter flying across the snow, shooting at a husky, a dog. Kudos again to the Prelude, because we know now that that's Lars. His name is Lars, which you don't know in this original. And is another thing that they did in the Prelude. He looks exactly like this guy in the original. So they made Lars look like the Lars in this one. So that's the detail that they did in the original, or in the Prelude to this one. I'm gonna get these confused, aren't I? But so we have the dog running into the U.S. research camp. We see McCready playing chess, which is a funny scene because, of course, it beats him, and he pours whiskey down it, into its circuitry and calls it a lying bitch. I mean, a cheating bitch. So, we see the chopper. He sees the chopper. Everyone comes out. The chopper lands. It's still firing at the dog. The dog runs up, starts licking all over them. Now, Clark, he is the kennel keeper. So he, of course, is immediately taken with the dog to help it. And Lars continues to shoot. We, of course, introduce to most of the cast, we got Childs, Blair, Knowles, Palmer, Clark, Gary, Cooper, Fuchs. I would never want that name. But he starts to throw a grenade at it, which would have killed them all, but he was willing to throw that grenade and blow it up right there on them to get that dog. Instead, he accidentally drops it. The other pilot jumps out. Boom, it's all gone. But he still keeps coming. Lars still keeps coming for that dog. Gary ends up, he shoots, I can't think of his name, but he shoots one of the guys in the leg, grazes him, and then Gary puts a bullet right through Lars's eye, and that takes care of that. Clark takes the dog and sort of lets it kind of meander about. They start immediately trying to get a signal out, like, help, some shits went down. But of course, just like the other Norwegian camp, there's no signal out here in Antarctica. So they can't get through. They end up deciding to go up there to the Norwegian camp to take a look at it. We also see the dog creeping around suspiciously. Clark. They show this scene where the dog walks into that room and you see someone's silhouette. I always thought it was Clark until later on. But I wonder who that was in that room that the dog got. The dog got. It wasn't the guy that got shot. So I don't know. I've never been quite able to figure out. If you know who that was, based on the timeline, the chronology, or maybe it was just a crew member they didn't show. I don't know. But I've always wondered about that. So they end up getting up to the camp. McCready goes, and they find the destruction. They find where the guy had cut his own throat and his wrist. Now, when they were walking through the camp, as I said, I would be talking about it in this one as well. When they are walking through that camp, I was just so overjoyed at how detailed Prelude was in making it look like the original. Because when he is walking through that camp, and he walks into that room, there's just this feeling as a film viewer and as a lover of the thing. Um, when MacReady walks into the room with the ice block, it's so cool to know, I know what happened there. I saw it. I saw him go through the roof. That's why the roof is broke. It just makes this so much more flavorable to be able to see all of these things. Whereas before, when I saw this, those were just rooms. They didn't hold any meaning. Well, yeah, that block is obviously where the thing came from. But you didn't know anything about it. You didn't have any memories of it. Whereas now, when I'm walking through with MacReady, through all of these rooms, I know who was there. I know what happened there. And that's really cool. And when they find the guy who cut his own throat and all, I remember him. I see him. I know who that was. I know why he did that. And when he did that. So, yeah, I mean, that just really makes this movie so much better to me. Not that it was a 10.10 out of 10. And I'm not saying it's like a 10.11 out of 10 now. I'm just saying that it's so much more meaningful to me. Me personally, I get a big thrill out of it, is what I'm saying. Of having these memories and knowing what happened in those rooms. So, we get to see the ice block, and then they find the thing body outside, which is another moment that I get to go, I know who that was. I know that that's Adam and Edward. I saw that happen in the prelude. I saw that happen. It just adds this extra flavor to it for me to be able to say that's Adam and Edward, So, you're seeing how I saw this movie anew. You know what I mean? It just having the prelude and watching the prelude right before it just adds so many little extra things to this movie to me. So, they find the ice block in the body. I wrote curiosity killed the cats that brought it back to the U.S. base. That's exactly right. So they bring it back to the base. They're examining it, stuff like that. We get to see the dog walking around. Someone finally tells Clark to put the damn thing in the kennel. That's when all the shit hits the fan because it tries to absorb the other dogs. And that's when everyone comes. MacReady and Childs and everybody comes. They see this monstrous thing. Part of it gets away. And they burn up what's left. And I wrote shit has begun. Yeah. So Blair, he starts examining it like Kate had done. He starts examining it and starts seeing this replication, this replicative. They're like the Borg. So he starts seeing, the Borg from Star Trek. So the thing is kind of like the Borg. She's seeing this replication. And she starts figuring it out as well. I mean, Blair starts figuring it out like Kate had figured it out. So, except unlike her, it drives him crazy, Blair. So, Blair explains to them what this thing is. That the cells and the imitations, and this, of course, equals extreme paranoia, breaks out amongst them immediately. When they find out that the dog had been loose all day, when they ask Clark about that shit that just went down into the kennel. That shit that went down there, you didn't notice anything about the dog? No. Well, are you saying you just put it in there? It's been loose all day, just walking around everyone? Yeah. Okay. So, Blair gets very suspicious of Clark, and they all then gather to watch videos from the Norwegian station, where they get to see them finding the ship. And this makes them curious. So McCready and I think it's Cooper, is that who it was? Went back up there and actually found the top from the top of the ship. And they find the block where the thing had been cut out. So, once again, it was cool to know I saw that block being cut out. So, now that Blair knows, they come back and they report what they saw, and Blair knows that someone has been assimilated and that it can't leave. So, he fucking, like, is getting really weird. Fuchs and Mac go out to one of the crawlers to talk about how Blair was losing it. And then we get to see Bennings. That's the guy. Bennings is the one that was shot at the beginning of the movie by Lars. He gets assimilated. And he almost completes his assimilation too, but they manage to catch him before it happens when Winters walks in and catches him. So they end up burning him outside while McCready and Childs and all of them burn everything of the thing that they can find. Mac thinks he sees Blair doing something in a helicopter. So he goes and he finds out that Blair has, destroyed the radio. Or, he had destroyed the helicopter, and now he's in there destroying the radio. He's knocked the hell out of Winters. There's the big fight where they get into that. They end up locking him out into the tool shed to keep him from everybody, because he's obviously lost his damn mind. So it's at this point that, just like Kate had done, they start trying to come up. He tells Fuchs, to come up with some kind of test to find out. Once Fuchs just about does that, though, someone gets him, turns the lights off. He goes outside looking. They find the blood has been, that, they had come up with this antigen test, and instead they end up finding Fuchs's body. The blood has been messed up, so that brings up a whole, their first test plan has been ruined. Same thing happened in Prelude. They had come up with a good idea and then had to go to something secondary. Not quite as good. And in the original, this is what they're having to do now too. This blood test has been messed up. So now they too are going to have to come up with something original to try to figure out who's who and who's not a who. So Fuchs gone. They end up finding his body though. Blair wants to come back inside, but they're like, yeah, we'll see. Then they had found Fuchs burned up out there. They couldn't figure out, did someone do it? Did he do it to himself to keep from being assimilated? So Mac then notices that his lights are on at his cabin. So that him and Knowles go up there to take a look. Everybody's waiting for them, and Knowles ends up coming back along, saying that he found McCready's clothes all ripped up, and that obviously somebody had planted that, and I think we know now who it was, and that was Blair had planted it. So they think Mac's one of them. He manages to get back inside, though, despite their attempts to stop him. And that's when Norris has the heart attack. Because they try, when Mac gets back inside, they kind of, attack him. And Norris has the heart attack. And then we get that really cool defibrillator scene where the doctor has his arms eaten off. Or bit off. And we have that cool, the spider head. Can't beat the spider head. That's why I put Dr. 8, trying to resuscitate. And then I put Spiderhead, yeah, because that is a classic, phenomenal scene. So Mac has now come up with this idea because of that. He's decided to tie them all up because after seeing what happened to Norris, he's like, that gave me an idea. Each little part of this entity, when separated from the larger one, can still maintain on its own. So he's decided to draw blood from them, put it in a petri dish, and take a very hot wire, and if the blood reacted in a defensive manner, then that person would be a thing, or infected, or however you want to describe it. So that leads to probably one of the most tension level 10 scenes in any horror movie or any movie period, and that was the testing scene with all of them tied up. And he knows that he's not one, so he tests himself. He needs one helper, so he tests Winters, and Winters turns out to be. And at each one that he tests, you get more and more nervous. It's one of the most tense and tension-inducing scenes ever in a horror movie, is the testing scene in The Thing. You have no how hard it is for me to say The Thing instead of The Thing, because my accent is The Thing. It's not tree. It's not. See, I can't even hardly say three. It's not three. It's tree. And it's The Thing. It's like fodder. Mother. But, so yeah. So we get to see that scene is phenomenal. Especially when they get down to where there's Childs and Gary and Palmer. Those are the only three that's left. And Mac is really suspecting Gary. That's who he thinks destroyed the blood supply and sabotaged that test. So they get down to Palmer and actually jump like a motherfucker, and still do, because you just, even though you've seen it so many times, you know that Palmer's blood is going to jump and make that little squeal sound. But unless you had your brain hooked into the Blu-ray player, there's that millisecond that it occurs is just, you're just never ready for it, is what I'm saying. It's like 1, 2, 3, and it still gets you. So, but that's hilarious with that. And Palmer changes. He kills Winters, which was absolutely horrible. And they manage to burn him, and they get Childs and Gary loose. Then they test Childs, which was funny. Let's do this, man. So he turns out to be right, and then they're all just sitting there staring at Gary. And that to this day will make me sometimes I have to pause it. It's according to what mood I'm in, but when they test Gary's blood and it's normal and he's not, he just so calmly and with such reserve, just whenever you gentlemen get ready, I would appreciate it if I didn't have to spend. And then he screams, the rest of my fucking life tied to this couch. And there are times when I have to pause it, Sometimes I'll just laugh, but then sometimes I will lose it and laugh to the point where I have to pause it because it takes me out of the movie. But, so now we're left with Knowles, he's clear. They go out to test Blair, and they can't find him. Childs thinks he sees him. Knowles thinks he sees him. But he's not in the room. They find a tunnel, and they go under there to find out they're just building a little ship out of parts of the helicopter and stuff like that. So Blair is this thing is trying to get away. Now, I don't think I mean, personally, I don't think it was trying to get back to space with that little ship. I think it was just a ship to get him to land, to get him out of there. At least get up enough to get to a continent, to get loose. I don't know, some people have told me they think he was trying to get back into space. I don't think so. I think he would have done like the Doctor did in, Sander did in Prelude. He would have just went back to the ship and tried to get the ship started again. Instead, he looks like he's building a little mini ship that I think he's just trying to get off Antarctica, maybe to South Africa. But in any event, so they find all of that. He's gone. So they start just going, well, we can't let this stuff go. Just like Kate had said in Prelude. We can't let this stuff go. So we're just going to blow up all the buildings. So they start doing that. Because they know that Blair doesn't really have to kill them now. He just needs to go somewhere and be frozen until the next group of idiots find him and resuscitate him. Thaw him out. So they start blowing up all of the buildings. Childs has been missing. Nas gets taken, but off screen we don't get to see it. And Gary gets taken by Blair. We do get to see that. He assimilates Blair by sticking his hands in his face, which was pretty cool. Especially when he walked away dragging him off with his hand. That was pretty gross. So Matt gets attacked when he realizes that Nas, who had went around the corner, is no longer there. Then the thing comes through the floor at him, and he fights it, blows it up. Mac's alone now, with all of these burning buildings, and Child shows up. His explanation is that he thought he saw Blair, which he probably did, and that he ran off after him and got lost in the whiteout, which is probably true. And so the two face off, they sit down, he gives his explanation. Mac is like, well, it really doesn't matter. I mean, we're the only two left, so, if you were it, you could take care of me right now, and if I was it, I could take care of you right now, so we might as well just sit down and have a drink. I mean, what's to be done? Which is defeatist, admittedly, but it's also very accurate, right? If we got any surprises for each other, I don't think there's really anything we can do about it right now. So they sort of like admit that maybe they're probably going to freeze to death as soon as the area heat comes down. I don't think so, though, because I think that, for instance, I didn't see them blow up Mac's cabin up there. Nas cut him loose, that's true. But that's the one building I didn't see them blow that up. But in any event, they could still block off a building, and they got plenty of lumber they can burn forever, till a rescue thing comes. So I think they'll be all right. I could figure it out, provided all the things are dead. I could figure it out, because like I said, I don't remember them blowing up. You can let me know if you know. I don't remember them blowing up Mac's cabin up there. It was away from the camp. It was up there. I don't remember them blowing that up. So they could go up there and stay. And even if not, they didn't blow up. There's places in there that they could there's plenty of lumber. It wouldn't take them long to build an enclosure where they could keep a fire going. They got plenty of firewood now. And kerosene laying everywhere, so I think they'll make it. But his last words is we'll just sit here and wait and see what happens. And the movie ends. So like I said, I am a gigantic, horrendous fanboy of Kurt Russell in The Thing from 1982. And because I love this movie so much, I really appreciated Prelude, maybe a lot more than some others do, because I love this so much. the nuances that Prelude brings to this movie, for me personally, makes this movie something that I didn't think was possible, and that is me love it even more. I'm a curious person. I don't like questions. I like answers. So having all the things that they see in this movie answered. What was that camp? What was that room? How did this all happen? Who were the Norwegians? What were they doing? What was that creature? The two-faced creature. To see how that happened is cool as fuck. Just to know the fucking pilot's name, or well, he wasn't the pilot, but just to know Lars's name, that the guy that walks up at the beginning of this movie shooting at that dog was Lars. And I know him. I saw him. I know his story. I know why he didn't speak English. He couldn't speak English to Kate either. He had to have that translator there, so he couldn't tell them in English what the fuck was going on. So I love both of them. I love Prelude. It's an 8 out of 10. And I love this, which is a 10.10 out of 10. Why isn't Prelude a 10.10? Or a 10 out of 10? I don't know. I guess it could be a little bit. There were just little things. I wish they'd used more practical, but I like the CGI. It's fine. I think the thing in the ship was too CGI. So yeah, so it's an 8 out of 10. 8.5 maybe. But this is a 10 out of 10. And also, like I said, Prelude gets a lot of kudos for their meticulous detail. The way they made everything look like it took place the same day as this. From technology to recreating the sets to showing us who the guy was that cut his throat to showing us the two-headed thing, all of that together just makes both of them. And like I said, in either this one or the Prelude, I have not watched. Whenever I get them out together. And I watch them together. Whenever I think of watching The Thing to me is this. It's one story. It's one movie in 2 parts. It's one movie, and I watch them as one movie. And that's the way that I do it. And I absolutely love it that way. So yes, that's John Carpenter's The Thing. And I will see you in the next. I'm going to try to start Wolf Week now. Where I think I have chosen my 7 werewolf movies. Movies like The Cursed, and American Werewolf in London, and Dog Soldiers, and Wolfen, and Bad Moon, and we'll see what my 7 choices are. But yeah, stay tuned for Wolf Week, and I will see you in the next video. Love you, miss you, bye-bye. And always remember, never forget, I really do think you are a very special person. Even if you don't, you are. Love you, miss ya. Bye-bye.